So this is the Wacaco Picopresso, and this is a portable espresso brewer that I've owned for over a year. And today I want to ponder the question, is this something you should consider? Is this something you should spend your money on? Is this a portable espresso brewer worth considering? And I'd love to answer that right away by saying it absolutely is. In fact, today I want to argue that this is the best portable espresso brewer that currently exists on the market today. And I'd love to take it one step even further and say this might be the best budget espresso brewer that exists today as well. So today I want to talk about why that is, why this is so great, why I really enjoy it, how I brew espresso with it, some recipes that will blow your mind, so stick around for that at the end of this video. But I also want to talk about some pros, some cons after using it for a year. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to understand if this is something that's worth it for you, if this is something that you should spend your money on. Now you might be wondering, Kyle, why are you making a YouTube video on the Picopresso while you're on vacation? Well, it's very simple to answer. Number one, the grind never stops. Sometimes I really first crack myself up. And number two, I really think that this is an appropriate espresso brewer to use while traveling. So the Picopresso just seemed fitting. So why don't we start by brewing some coffee, and I'll give you a brief overview of how this works for those who aren't aware. So this is a very portable espresso brewer, and it all comes into one little pod. Now this comes in a little case, which I think is pretty neat. It looks great, and it does a good job of keeping this protected. But honestly, it's not really needed. Everything fits into its little pod itself. Now unscrewing the lid here reveals not only a tamper, but a dosing funnel. Now both of these tools are going to be very useful in the near future. Now on the bottom you can see there's a spout. And on the spout here, this actually pops out to reveal something that I find very, very exciting with this brewer, which is a bottomless portafilter. Now I find this very exciting because this allows us to see what's going on with our espresso, but even espresso machines that are hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, don't come with a bottomless portafilter. So that's a nice touch. Now if we unscrew the bottom here, this is really where all the magic happens. This right here is our shower screen, and then our basket itself. We first take our ground coffee. Now I have some pre-ground coffee here that is ground and dialed in for this espresso. Now today I'm going to be using 16 grams of coffee, and this seems to be the sweet spot for the Picopresso. It is an 18-gram basket, so it can use more, it can take more coffee, but I find 16 grams just to brew very good, consistent coffee on the stock basket, that is. Now, something that is very important with brewing espresso in general is making sure that you distribute your grounds in your portafilter very evenly, so when the water goes through the espresso puck, it brews a good cup of coffee. Now today, I lost my WD-T tool on the way to the cottage, and so many of you are going to judge me, but I'm going to use a corn bobber thing that holds the corn as you eat it. I don't know, this might be a Canadian thing. These are much too thick, but this is better than nothing. So let's spin this out. Aid in our distribution of our espresso. And one thing I like to do is make sure that I'm not tamping too hard, but I'm tamping consistent. So I'm just going to give a little bit of pressure there, not too much. And then once I'm done that, I'm going to add the shower screen, put it on top of this area here. It's actually really easy to use, and honestly, that's something that's very important to me. If you've got too many pieces, too many parts, especially while traveling, it's just not something you're gonna want to do, right? Like if you have a lot of process into brewing espresso, you're gonna find reasons not to brew. At this point, typically you would have a kettle that would have electricity, but you might not if you're traveling. And so today I thought it'd be fitting to use some water out of a canister. And we're gonna take this fellow Carter, and so we're gonna fill this brewer up to the top. It's time to brew. So I'm gonna grab my cup here, and you may or may not have a scale. In this instance, I do, and we're gonna brew. Now, my typical recipe would be to push this about 8 times to give it a little pre-infusion. And then I wait about 10 seconds, and then we're gonna continue to pump consistently until we get our espresso yield that we desire. I have no complaints. Like, this is by no means the best espresso I've ever had, but it's not bad, right? This is an espresso I really enjoy in a setting like this. And this is why I want to make this video, because I think this might be, in my opinion, one of the best values for espresso. Now this is $170 US, but even at that value, it's kind of hard to beat. You know, this would kind of rival something like the Flair Neo, and that has a pressurized portafilter. You know, what else do I love about this? Well, this is also super compact. There's no doubting that this is incredibly portable, right? This you can throw in a suitcase, you can throw in a bag, you can take this on the go. You could even brew this in an airplane. that might be a good idea for a video for another time, because James Hoffmann did challenge us to brew espresso wherever we go. And like I said, it's easy. Right? The process is nice, and I don't mind it. Yeah, you have to take apart. There's lots of little pieces, but it's not to the point where I don't want to brew espresso. That's very nice, and that's really great, especially if you want to travel. You want to use this in places that you would normally not brew espresso, and that's really what makes this fascinating. I love that. Now, also, let's talk about the things that aren't so great, right? Because this is by no means a perfect brewer. You wouldn't expect so at this price range. And one thing I don't love about the Picopresso is the pump mechanism. Now, this works well, but it's definitely not an enjoyable experience, at least not for me. Depending on how fine you grind your coffee, if you want to do like a very long pre-infusion or like finely ground coffee, it can be hard on your hands, right? And so I found that instead of using your thumbs, as most people would do here, to use your fingers instead. You'll get a little less torque, but you'll have a little more control. And I find that it's a little easier to keep it centered over the cup. I wish this was just a little easier to press. Maybe this is just me. Other things I would love to see is a bigger water canister. Like I would love to be able to pull a Lange's, and I would love that to be a little bit more. I don't love the stock filter basket. Now this is what comes with the Wacaco Picopresso, but I cannot recommend enough upgrading to a precision basket. There are companies like IMS who make them for a fairly affordable price. Now, in consideration of how much this device costs, it might be a lot of money for an upgrade, and that might not be worth it to everybody. But if you're somebody who wants to be able to brew like cafe quality espresso like Wacaco claims, that might be something you'd want to do down the road. And I have done this. In fact, I have bought the IMS shower screen. Unfortunately, while packing for the cottage, it was the one thing I left on our coffee table at home. Regardless, it is not bad out of the box, and while it can be improved, I can't complain too much about this. I want to share some recipes that you absolutely need to consider if brewing on the Wacaco Picopresso, or any portable espresso brewer for that matter, or really any espresso brewer. But before we do, let's quickly talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Third Wave Water. Now, for those who don't know, Third Wave Water is a mineral supplement that adds minerals to demineralized water to make the perfect water for coffee. Now, I'm here in Muskoka, and when I go to the store, I can get spring water, I can get all these different things, but the consistency in my water will change depending on where I am. And I think that's really where something like Third Wave Water really shines. This is an ad, but this is a product that I would use regardless of if this video is sponsored or not, if I'm quite honest with you. Because here I can go buy demineralized water, distilled water, add a pack of Third Wave Water to that product, and I have the exact same water here in the middle of the lake as I do at home on my brew bar. If you want to check them out, I've got a discount. If you use the link down below, you can check that out. Try Third Wave Water. Let me know what you think, and thank you, Third Wave Water, so much for sponsoring this video. All right, so we've made a mess here, so I think the only thing left for us to really do here is to brew a couple different recipes. And so I showed you a traditional espresso shot, right, with a pre-infusion, 10 seconds or so, 2-3 bars of pressure by doing about 8 pumps, and then brewing like a 1-to-2 ratio. That's pretty typical in traditional modern espresso. So I also want to show you a blooming espresso, and this one made famous by Scott Rayo. And if you want to know all about the blooming espresso, I actually have a full video on flow profiles for a traditional espresso machine that you can find. Click right up here. But let me show you how to do it on the Picopresso. Now what we're going to do is take our coffee, which is finely ground, slightly finer than we would grind on a traditional modern shot. And we're going to do, again, 16 grams of coffee here. Going to put my shot collar on. Now for this one, we're going to do about 10 to 12 pumps. But what we're going to do is after we get to that point, we're going to then stop pumping for a full 30 seconds. We're just going to let it pre-infuse in that coffee, let it bloom is the key to the blooming espresso. And then we're going to then brew until we get, a 1-to-2 or 1-to-2.5, even up to a 1-to-3 ratio, depending on your preference. So let's try that. Now we're just waiting for 30 seconds here. You might see some drips of coffee. That's completely normal. And again, I explained that in that full flow profiling video. Now after 30 seconds, we're going to then go ahead and keep on pumping as we normally would. Now today in this cup, I brewed 36 grams out, and it was 16 grams in, so that's about a 2.25 ratio. Oh, so so good. If I went the blooming espresso, it just really helps delicacy in a coffee to life. And if you haven't tried this, that's an absolute must try. Oh, that's so good. Okay, and this is the last recipe, which you have to try. Now, I gotta give a huge shout out to my man, Brian Kwan, who talked a lot about this stuff in a video that he made on the Picopresso. In fact, I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. If you aren't following Brian, go do. He's making some fantastic coffee content that I can't recommend enough. Now, in Brian's video, he talked about the turbo shot. And I've talked about this in other videos. I recently just did a full video on the turbo shot, which again, you can find up here. But this one we're gonna do on the Picopresso. Now, Brian talks about using the IMS basket that I've talked about earlier, but also a shower puck screen. And this is something that, you know, is debatable. I think that it's a good idea if you want to help distribute the flow of water through that puck. So we're going to brew a turbo shot at this point. Now, all the turbo rules apply. We want to grind slightly coarser than normal, especially the other twos that we brewed. And with this one here, we're going to down dose. So I'm going to use 15 grams instead of the 16 that we use on the other cups. And with the turbo, we're trying to brew this under 20 seconds, roughly around 15 seconds. And we're going for a 1-to-3 ratio. So this is quick. We're going to pump as quick as we can to be able to achieve these results. Okay, so there's no doubting that on the Pico, using the stock basket, this is messy. Now the IMS definitely helps with that, but you might want to use the spouted portafilter on this one. Regardless, let's try this. It's so good. With the turbo shot, you're gonna get a lot more delicacy. With later roast coffees, it just allows a lot more clarity, a lot more definition in your shot. They're absolutely delicious. So at this point, really what I want you to know is that I really recommend the Picopresso. It does need some upgrades out of the box if you want to make this the best thing possible. And after a year, I'm brewing with it in the middle of a lake, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. If you want to check it out, I've got a link down below that you can use it. And if you've gotten this far in the video, let me know by writing down below the coffee piston. Write that down below in the comments, and you are my absolute favorite. I love each and every single one of you guys. We'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye.